Alrighty, welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, Chapter 7, Part 2. So in this section, we're going to cover some recommended solutions on what to do once you've identified a leader. These are my ideas. I've seen hints of these in other things that I've read, and they seem like they would work out great. What I really don't want is for this to become a system where somebody takes what I'm talking about, makes a checklist, and then tries to run everybody through the process. Because I think that these things that I'm going to talk about are still variable, as variable can be. So the first thing is going to be, obviously, organizational change to utilize leaders. So development. So once you've gotten somebody that you know has the leadership talent, as we've talked about, and you've identified them using some of the ideas that we used in the previous section, then you have to teach them how to temper that philosophy, or to temper that talent, I'm sorry. And the way that you do that is you got to teach them philosophy. I'm actually I'm moderately frustrated that I was not introduced to philosophy much younger and taught some of the wisdom of philosophy many times over, because it would have been really useful when I was younger. But talking somebody through philosophy and explaining, hey, this is the approach that you should have, this is the mentality that you should have, all of that's very important. And that's how you develop somebody who's got the leadership talent. They're going to know how to do it. You find somebody that's got the talent to be a violinist or a pianist, you teach them and you temper that talent, but they still have it. You see what I mean? So you give them a little bit of a structure-ish to operate in. So wisdom. And a lot of the examples you see here are going to be about wisdom. What was something that was messed up by other leaders in the past, or what was something that worked for other leaders in the past? What were some of the things that somebody who had absolutely no leadership and management training ever, right, which is most leaders in history, none of those people got an MBA. None of those people went to such and such leadership academy. They were leaders. They had that ability. And through luck or through messing it up a bunch of times, they finally came out with what worked. And the stuff that's worked has been written down and recorded for us. So go and teach that wisdom, which is, here's the mistakes that were made. And you're going to get caught up in it too. This is another thing, best and worst case scenarios. You walk through, here's things that have happened in the past. Here's where somebody did something, and look how catastrophic it ended up because they weren't humble, they didn't have integrity, they weren't paying attention. And here's something that happened, and the reason it happened is, on the good side, is because they were paying attention, had humility, had integrity, had vigilance. And then you got to watch them. So just because they've got the talent doesn't mean that they're going to be really good at following or embodying the leadership philosophy right out the gate. You got to go keep an eye on them. Hey, maybe that wasn't the most humble thing. Did it really, somebody has a big project and it goes through and is super successful. So the new leader comes in, man, I'm amazing. I got my people to do this. You say, well, did you really need to take credit for it? Did you really? Because how much work did you really do on that? You probably did 10%. You just happened to be in charge when it happened. So if somebody's really got humility, they would go and give all the credit to the team, right? You might have flicked the switch that got it to work, but that doesn't mean that you get to claim all the credit. So this is another thing that I've talked about, and I've seen in a book called Up the Organization, which will be the first book I review in the next video. And it's something that I've thought about. It's something that I wished had happened at every leadership meeting that I ever went to in my life, where you had a bunch of leaders in the room. So you have a meeting, you get all the leaders together, and if the leaders have been selected and picked and groomed in the mold of humility, integrity, empathy, and vigilance, which is our philosophy, then what you do is you get all the leaders together for that part of the organization that makes sense. So if you've got a place where there's 10 to 15 leaders that you can bring together for a quarter or a half a year or a year, whatever's going to work for your organization, you get all those leaders together. And then each leader says, here's 3 things that went well, and here's 3 things that went badly. Well, why do you do that? Well, it's to the development part. One, It shows that you have the ability to think through the problem and that you've been able to solve it. Or here's something that went really well because here's just what I did and I thought it made sense, but it was a great success. I'm not sure why. Well, let's say that you have 15 people in the room. I'm just giving an example. Well, maybe 4 of those people have the same problem, or maybe 4 of them have been working on a situation that needs that same solution, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh, I need to go talk to that person. Let me go figure that out." But that's what each leader does. So then they talk about here's what didn't go well, and if the group has humility, integrity, empathy, and vigilance, then you can talk about something you really screwed up, and nobody goes, "Oh, you're fired." Everybody makes mistakes. Stuff doesn't go right all the time. But then those leaders go, "Oh, ooh, hey, check this out." So maybe they've got a question about something they've been trying to understand about philosophy, about some sort of a wisdom thing. Or I've seen this trend and I don't understand it. I'm not sure that I get it. What's blah, blah, blah. And I've got 15 other people that are in the leadership frame, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that suddenly can go, "Ooh, yeah, I've thought about that too, and here's where I am on that thought." Or, "Yeah, that's, it's once you see it, it's obvious, or once you've figured it out, it's obvious, but here's the solution." Because you've got leaders that have that talent talking about other leaders. Have you ever watched musicians sit around and talk about music? It's fascinating. Half the time I don't understand it, but they're talking about it, and they innately understand exactly what they're talking about. Same thing like we talked about with creatives. You get 3 or 4 leader types together, and you talk for a half an hour about the problems, you've solved a problem. And it's usually something that's important because nobody else has seen it. If you're the only person in your organization that's got vigilance and everybody else is just looking at the floor, you're the only person that notices it. Well, maybe 4 other people notice it in that leadership team. And then you have, as a tier, you're going to end up with a pyramid. We talked about the hierarchy. So the lowest level of leaders go first. And then you have the next level of leaders go and give their briefing. And then the next higher level, whatever it is, whatever your organization is. Well, then what happens? So you're the big boss. And you've been sitting there and you've got humility, integrity, empathy, and vigilance. And you're listening. And here's all these people standing up. And all of a sudden you notice that 5 of the junior leaders and 2 of the intermediate leaders had a much similar problem. And you realize that the problem is because it was some great plan that you came out with that you didn't communicate correctly. Or that you didn't describe correctly, which is communicate. But you didn't define what you wanted done correctly. And so it caused a bunch of chaos in your organization. So then you stand up. You're the big boss, right? You stand up and you say, "Well, here were the 3 things that I was going to talk about, but after listening to everybody talk, it sounds like there's 2 more that I completely missed. I didn't even realize that this thing had those repercussions. So let's solve those first." Imagine that. Imagine a place where the leaders can talk about things that are goofed up and it actually gets fixed. One of the things that drives me, it drives everybody crazy. You walk in, you say, "This is a major problem. Everybody's having this problem. We got to fix it." Well, and there's excuses and there's obfuscation and there's this and this and nothing changes. It's stupid. So then it's like, what are you doing? Anyway, sorry. So what's this going to do? It's going to expose systemic issues, good ideas, miscommunication, poor guidance. Somebody might, in the purpose of their briefing on their 3 things that they did well, say some offhanded comment that makes the most sense that anybody's heard in years. And that person probably wasn't even thinking about it. But because you have a bunch of creative types that are leaders in the same room talking about this stuff, suddenly these complicated problems get solved. Or it might even be, the other one, like I talked about, you're the big boss, everybody's complaining, you talk around and around and around and around, say, "Well, here's what I wanted to do." And then you get everybody in the room says, "Well, why don't you just ask this one question instead of giving us a whole new thing?" Well, okay, well, let's get rid of that whole process. Since it's messing everybody up and it's more work than it's worth, let's get rid of it. That's what a leader would do. Because what's a manager do? Try harder. All right, placement and compensation. This is going to be controversial. because there's a whole lot of structure that's built around hierarchies of money, right? So I'm going to say this at the beginning, and it's going to sound crazy at first, but I think the more you think about it, you realize it's true. We have to stop paying the big boss the most money. Here's why. I'm not a socialist and I'm not a communist. I'm all for capitalism. But if the highest paying job in the whole organization is the one for the big boss, then you're going to have people that are greedy and that are self-serving and that are backstabbing and conniving and trying to get to that job because of the prestige that comes with all the money. And so you're going to reward, instead of having that position be, here's a job and your job is to, So that job, you're the CEO. Very cool. Okay, well, describe what the CEO does. So if the CEO's job is to manage money and processes and systems and everything, then don't call him the chief executive officer. Call him the chief manager. And then you got to have somebody who's taking care of the people and the process and all that sort of stuff. Well, why don't people want to take care of people? Why is it that people avoid leadership jobs? Why is it that we pay that job so much money? Because leadership's tough and it's hard and it's annoying and it drains you. But to somebody that's sort of a natural leader, they thrive in that environment. They love it. And so if you pay somebody X amount of dollars, maybe a little bit more than everybody else, fine. But you say this is the duties that come with that job. Next thing you know, you're going to get people that want to do the leadership part and are happy with the money. But you're not going to get somebody who's like, I have to get a feather in my cap. My goal is to make a $5 million salary in this company. Where's the $5 million jobs? Oh, there's 2 over there. I'm going to get that job. Backstab, 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 connive, obfuscate, lie, get the job, walk around bragging about how amazing you are. So define the job. You need somebody, as we talked about in the hierarchy section, you need somebody who's going to take care of the people. Who's the advocate for the people? Who is the person that's making sure that's watching the environment and standing around looking for chaos? So adjust the pay. Now, if you want to pay the chief manager a bunch of money, fine. But you need to have somebody that's the leader, and that leader has the ability to influence that manager, because everybody associates how much money they make with how much authority they have, which is dumb. But you've got to have that leader that's up there somewhere. And then what happens? If you're not paying the CEO twice what you're paying the vice president, so you pay them $1 million more. Let's say you've got a vice president who's making $2 million. The CEO is going to make $6 million. Well, pay the CEO $3 million. Okay. And then with that other $3 million, you give everybody a pay raise that's working. I was accused recently of sounding like a socialist. Well, if you're working, if you're doing the job, you should get paid. If you are not, you should not have a job. So I'm just going to go through some ideas. Areas like the chief of staff should not be a super manager. That should be a leader, because the leader's job in a leader in a chief of staff position is going to make sure that the staff is not getting out of control and checking on the other leaders and checking on the boss. I already said this. Define the requirements for the position. If it's people-focused, put a leader in there. If it's management-focused, put a management type in there, not a manager. We got to get rid of those titles. That's why the whole definition chapter existed, or definition section. You need somebody who's going to take care of people, leader. Find a leader, find somebody who's doing that, and put them in that job. And pay it well. That's fine. But anyway, if there's an organizational level that has several managers, you need a leadership type to keep an eye on them. Because what happens? This is another thing. You got it. When I say don't pay so much, you should not pay people for creating stuff if something doesn't need to get created. Right? If your pay system is, well, you did these 9 things during your term or during the period of performance, period of evaluation, whatever you want to call it. So these 9 things you did now get you a 5% pay raise. What if 9 of those 8 things were what if 8 of those 9 things were disruptive and caused chaos in the organization? But on your evaluation, you look great. You look amazing. Look at all that stuff you did. So you got to figure it out. If you're going to pay a manager, you pay a manager for that, sure. But maybe you don't pay a leader for that. Maybe during the whole year, that maybe everything was running smooth. What happens if you take over an organization, everything's running smooth, and there's hardly anything to fix? And at the end of the year, what did you do? Well, I tuned this, and I tweaked that, and I fixed that, and I kind of simplified this, and, hey, our performance went up 6%. We were already at 110% to productivity. Now we're 116. Well, you didn't grow like the previous one, so you didn't do that good. That doesn't make any sense. If somebody didn't blow it and kept things running smoothly, maybe nothing needed to be done. No more than 3 years in a job. And the reason I say this is a couple of things. First of all, you stay in one leadership position for too long, you start smelling yourself. Start thinking you can get away with things. Or you get such a good reputation that you don't have to try anymore. Or you start getting lazy because, hey, things weren't great, made things better, things are running smooth. Now what? A leader is going to thrive on being given another place to go fix stuff. You got to figure that out. That's the hard part, because if you look at a lot of organizations, it would take a major amount of tweaking to fix that. But I think it's the answer. You take somebody that's a leadership type and move them somewhere else. In the company, in the organization, in the local organization, I don't know. But you got to keep them moving around, because then they have to go continually behave in the correct way, exhibit the philosophy. And this is one that somebody talked to me about years ago, and I didn't think it made sense, but I've kind of sort of unofficially done this myself, and I've seen other people do it. You do your leadership job. If you're doing a good job as a leader, it takes something out of you, because having empathy, paying attention, right? You got to look. You're looking for all this sort of stuff. Having humility and having integrity, it takes a lot out of you. So you let them go off or take off for 3 months. This is an idea. I like it though. Hey, you're done with your leadership role. Go away for 3 months. Check in with us on these 3 days. We'll call you, see how everything's going, and then come back. And then you give them, here's the next role you're going to go. Here's the team. Here's this and here's this and here's this. You're going to take over another leadership job. Right? The reason that you need this is just some time to decompress, to relax, to get that out of your system. And maybe you learn some stuff. Maybe you need a chance to think. Maybe you need a chance to read, because if leadership's intensive work. Maybe you have 5 or 6 books that you've wanted to read that you were 2 pages at a time and had to get distracted by a phone call. And then what that does is that makes sure that hey, I've got 3 years to do this thing. And then at the end of the 3 years, you also evaluate them back to development and observation. Are you really that good of a leader? Should we put you in charge of people anymore? Maybe yes and maybe no. The Army got this right, or had this right, up until the 80s, where it used to be that you came in, and once you had been in for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, they determined if you were going to be a leader or if you were going to be a specialist. And if you were a specialist, you kept getting promoted, everything was fine, but you were never in charge of people. You were never a leader. But if you were a non-commissioned officer, if you were a sergeant, then your job was to be in charge of people at all times. And that's great, because then, you'd have the job and you'd move somewhere in the organization. You'd go get another job. You'd go do this. Hey, I'm going to go be this here. And that was awesome. But what happens sometimes is those guys that get burned out. Well, and women, you get burnt out. So that's why you evaluate them. Maybe you have to send them somewhere for a year. Maybe you send them to go be a leadership instructor. Maybe you send them to your development program where they can just teach and talk about it for a while. Who knows? So, like I talked about pay. Pay should be the same as the level of the organization, perhaps a different bonus structure. Like I said, if you want that big CEO boss and you're going to have that person, you want it to be a leadership job. You want that person to be a leader type, where they're watching this and watching that, doing this and doing that. Well, then fine. But don't make that. You can have it so it's a bigger bonus, better bonus, whatever. But if somebody is going there for the money, the money doesn't hurt, and we all need it. And hey, if you're the chief leader of a multi-billion-dollar organization, fine. Give that person several $1 million. It's fine. But But the focus should be on what's the role and what's the person that we've put in that role. Because if you suddenly make it so that there's a level of pay for manager, super manager, and a level of pay for super leader, well, then you're going to get those people there because you're rewarding that behavior. All right, evaluation. Now this one's weird. This is a hard one. I talked to a good friend of mine about this. I'm not sure. Evaluation. So I think that you should evaluate leaders based off of the philosophy. Because if I go and evaluate somebody based off of a bunch of numbers, and then one of them happens to be human oriented, well, I'll get you your numbers, but you're not going to have good human experience. They're not going to have a good environment for the employees. You're not going to have a good environment in the company. So if you're going to have a leader type, evaluate them on the philosophy. So human aspect of the organization, empathy. These, like I said, these are ideas, and this is probably the weakest part of my argument. But I firmly believe, well, I feel that if you evaluate and reward based off of the philosophy, you'll get more of the philosophy. So what's the environment like? And then this is one that's controversial as anything, right? You have an employee assessment and a leader evaluation. So what's the employee assessment? It's 3 questions. Would you voluntarily move to follow this boss? We're handing out bonuses this year. Do you think your boss should get a bonus? And then the third one, what was the third one? Oh, I had a third one. So bonus, should they get paid? Or should they get, oh yeah, and if I was going to give a pay raise out, we've got a percentage pay raise, should they get a pay raise? Pretty scary, right? Okay, well, why is it scary? If you're humble and you know that your employees are the most important thing in the building or in the organization, you have empathy, you've been taking care of them, you've got integrity, so you're not lying to them and backstabbing them, which means their serotonin's nice and high, everything's good for them, and you've been paying attention and not letting any catastrophes come in and mess up the organization, why wouldn't they recommend that you get a pay raise or a bonus? Now, you give out a survey and 80% or 70% of the employees, 75% say yes, then that's enough, because you're not going to make everybody happy. You're going to have the people that are the big anti-money people and say, well, they don't deserve anything. They make enough money. Oh, okay. But just imagine that. Imagine if you actually did that, because I've seen these 360 evaluations and they're not great. Accuracy in reporting. So did we have any lies come out of your organization? Were there any cover-ups? Is there any mess-ups or anything that happened? Now, if you as the big boss over this leader that you're evaluating have been doing your job, integrity, humility, empathy, vigilance, you would know already. But you should still evaluate them. Hey, you had 2 things that you tried to cover up this year. To me, that should be, you're gone. And so this is the evaluation. It should be how well they're progressing in their development of the philosophy. Because then you're going to get more of that. Sure, you can have numbers. What was your productivity? But realistically, this is the way that you have to evaluate leaders. What's the problem with this idea? First problem is HR is going to hate it because it's not numerical. It's hard to quantify. And it's also really difficult if you say this person's not cutting it, because you don't have some checklist, you don't have some system, you don't have some weird process where you can say, okay, here's this matrix and this matrix is this person. It doesn't work that way. But as a leader, you're the boss. You're evaluating this person. You say, I've worked with you on this for a year and you didn't. You're still treating your people like crap. If I had a leader that was treating people like crap, it wouldn't go well. So that's the thing. That's the drawback. The problem is that everybody's used to matrices and checklists and processes and where are you in this weird ethereal system? We've overcomplicated it. As I said in the beginning, we have buried it under a bunch of unnecessary crap. Do people want to follow you? Do I want to follow you? do I think that you honestly deserve a raise, or you're just getting one because you're sitting here, or do you deserve the bonus, whatever your compensation is? But you start asking employees if they think the boss should get that. A leader would go, okay, ask them. I'm sure, I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident that they will say yes. Or I haven't connected with this team. I haven't gotten it right. There's been too many issues. I had to let too many people go. So I might not. However, here's the things that I had to get done. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't give them a pay raise or that you don't give them a bonus, but you'll know what the employees think, because if their boss is doing a good job, they'll say, yeah, hey, why not? We got a bonus. Get the boss a bonus. Or, no, that boss is terrible. And then that's a different conversation. So the issue is, or the problem with this whole situation is that it's all different and it's all new. But it's, the way that we're doing it now, oh yeah, you get promoted based off of your metrics. Okay, well then you get lots of metrics. Well, how about getting promoted on how your employees like you, or want to work with you, or want to work for you? You might have some employees that are like, I really am not sure that I like this person very much, but they've never lied to me. They've never stabbed me in the back. They've always taken care of us, and we've hadn't been sideswiped by anything. So sure, they're not failing. Why not? So that's the last part of the chapter. So now I want to have a conversation. Email. I'll put the email at the end of this. It's leadership is a philosophy I think leadership is a philosophy, not a checklist, at gmail.com. And I would be happy to either do a Skype. I want to record it and put it on here, though, on this series. Do Skype, do some sort of phone interview, whatever it is. I would love to have conversations about this, because I honestly think that it's simple but complex in its simplicity. And I just think that we've spent too much time trying to make things more complicated than they have to be. And then what do we have is a complicated mess, instead of going out and finding what the characteristics are of the ancient leaders that still exist in humans today, but we think that we can give them a certificate and they have them. So I really genuinely appreciate your time. I know it's been a lot, and I know sometimes it seems a little scattered. But hopefully we can make something interesting out of this. And then the future episodes are going to be interviews, book reviews, movie reviews, stuff about leadership, just giving a perspective. Once we've taken all this as the Rosetta Stone, as the key, suddenly you apply that to things and everything seems to make more sense. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good day.